Okay, next we have a couple of commendations, which I suppose we could take in the front.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Dr. Valesky, you mentioned, I think, that April 12th is the Partner in Excellence Dinner for the East Brunswick Education Foundation. So our first resolution of appreciation is going to be on behalf of that. So may I have the following motion for resolution of appreciation? Whereas since its inception in 1993, the East Brunswick Education Foundation has funded 1,073 grants totaling almost $1.8 million in funding for technology equipment, cultural programs, authors and visits, school-wide cross-curricular learning events, hands-on materials, many books, and much more to complement teaching and learning throughout the district. Whereas from July 2015 through March 2016, the East Brunswick Education Foundation has awarded 41 grants amounting to $91,000 to ensure the organization's mission to enhance and enrich the curriculum for the students attending East Brunswick Public Schools continues. And whereas on April 12, 2016, at the Foundation's annual Partner in Excellence Dinner, the East Brunswick Education Foundation will celebrate this year's honorees. Educators Jeffrey Lesser and Marianne Zima, community members Dr. Vendaru and Dr. Steve Suskin, for perpetuating the goals of the Foundation. Now therefore be it resolved, the East Brunswick Board of Education appreciates the Foundation's trustees for their generous and inexhaustible support for excellence in education, and further therefore be it resolved that the East Brunswick Board of Education recognizes and applauds the 2016 Partners in Excellence for giving above and beyond in support of and to advocate for quality public education in East Brunswick.
So moved.
Motion
Second.
by Mrs. Becker, second by Dr. Cohen. Is there any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Mr. Levy, I think the president of the foundation is
Picture.
here. Photograph.
Now take your photos.
All right, thank you. Next, we have a resolution of commendation, 2016 All-State Music Ensembles. May I have the following motion? Whereas following a rigorous audition process, 5 East Brunswick High School students were among the top student musicians from throughout New Jersey selected to participate in the 2015-2016 All-State Music Ensembles. And whereas this selection requires a commitment on behalf of the students that results in many hours of intensive practice with students from all over New Jersey and culminates in performances at the New Jersey Education Association Convention and at the New Jersey Performing Arts Center. Whereas this honor, a tribute to the students' talent, hard work, and dedication, has brought local and state recognition to our schools, the district, and the community. Now therefore be it resolved that the East Brunswick Board of Education recognizes and commends these students and their teachers, directors for this outstanding achievement.
So moved.
Motion by Dr. Cohen, second by Mrs. Becker. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Let's go through the list of who we've got here. We'll start with our students. Ian, who? I have a feeling we're not going to want to turn out. See the audience. Ethan Kang.
I think you can see it.
Alexander Lynn. Kenny Sun. Katarina Wang. And we want to make sure we recognize their teacher directors, Brian Toth and Shel Lindgren. Excuse me. And, okay, well, that's it for our accommodations this evening. It looks like we're going to move on to our far more interesting topics. We're going to discuss the fiscal 2017 school district budget, in particular facilities management, pupil transportation, short and long-term debt, our tentative budget. Mr. Juliana, enlighten us. Now, I should also note, as Mr. Juliana is setting up, tonight we are going to be asked to adopt a tentative budget. Is that right, Mr. Juliana?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so, but this is just the beginning of the process. The final budget would be in May?
Final budget approval is scheduled for May 12th.
Thank you.
Yes. So from this point on, we have about 2 months within which to engage in discussion and any modifications that may be necessary. First off, the three preliminary aspects of discussion: facilities management, pupil transportation, and short and long-term debt. I'll just provide a quick overview on those areas. In the facilities management area, the budget reflects continuation of services to support the maintenance and custodial cleaning of each of our buildings. There are no significant changes within that budget. There are some items of discussion which the board will be engaging in regarding organization, but it is a continuation of services to support the facilities. Pupil transportation, again, this is continuation of providing services to our students to and from school. Late bus transportation for after-school activities and athletics. No significant changes in this budget. I will note, however, that we are looking at, very closely looking at our scheduling with regard to routes and how we might be able to economize on those routes, and that is something that we'll be engaging in further discussion in these coming weeks prior to the finalization of the budget. And then lastly, in short and long-term debt, in that aspect of the budget, no substantive changes. The one thing I will note is that on the bonded debt, which essentially are our mortgages, that we have debt that is beginning to be paid off. So there is a small reduction we're seeing for next year. This is a conversation that we had last year, that it would be in the offing, and something that we need to look toward in terms of longer-term planning for our facilities. So the board has had the opportunity to review those reports. Unless there's anything specific, I will go right into the tentative budget.
Go ahead. Thank you.
So let's start out with our overview in terms of our revenue. Our tax levy is reflecting the statutory 2% increase over last year. Our state aid does reflect a slight increase over the prior year, approximately $150,000 increase in state aid. Budgeted fund balance, which reflects funds that we believe will be able to be turned over from the current year, remains the same as it had been for the prior year. So no change there. Extraordinary aid is estimated at $500,000. There is no change on that. Fees assessed, also no changes. The fees assessed represent the amounts that are assessed for participation in clubs and activities and athletics. In community programs, the amount being transferred or recommended for transfer to next year's budget is slightly increased. It's going from current year of $500,000 to $662,000 and change. That is to cover one-time expenses that we've recommended in the budget. Tuition collected is also seeing a projected increase based on the students that we have accepted in district on a tuition basis. This is largely as a result of special education tuition students that come from other districts into our programs, and also some displaced students that have been placed in East Brunswick by the state of New Jersey. That increase, we're going from an approximate $90,000 budget in the current year for revenue going to $325,000. And then other sources of revenue at $304,000. That includes interest income, facility use rentals, and other what I'll call smaller items that comprise the $304,000. We have a total revenue budget of $146.2 million, and of course, we're required to have a budget in balance, and so our estimated expenses are at an equal amount to that estimated revenue. State aid, just a quick overview, historical perspective from 2008-9. I like to use that as the benchmark because that was a pivotal point in time for us as a district. The last time that we received in excess of $20 million in state aid, and it was in the 2009-10 year that the district suffered a very significant cut in state aid, which affected programs and services across the board. As you can see, over the last several years, our state aid has not been restored to the level that we were at, so the differential has really been placed on the local property owner in terms of supporting the schools to the tune of, well, over a period of time, $2.5 million or so. In terms of our state aid data and a few other key items comparing this year to next year, I already noted that our state aid is increasing approximately $150,000. Likewise, our obligation for, or I should say conversely, our obligation for charter school is taking a toll on the budget in excess of $200,000, actually about $235,000. Impacting the amount of resources available for our own programs and services. SDA assessment is remaining the same. These are amounts that the state requires that we budget to pay for its bonded debt through which the state provided grants to school districts. And our state aid for debt service, which is our mortgage fund, remains the same. So I calculate this to be an effective funding decrease. When we look at our charter school obligation, for which we have no choice, versus the state aid increase, we're seeing an effective reduction in resources. As far as our overall budget, with estimated expenses at $146.2 million, the general fund tax levy increase in the tentative budget is approximately $2.4 million. We are seeing a reduction in the debt service fund tax levy as a result of the debt coming down, debt levels coming down. So the net tax increase of $2.2 million equates to about 1.75% over the current year. Budget highlights, certainly we're here for instruction, and so the budget represents continued support for instructional programs, curriculum improvements, technology investment, and a provision for capital improvements. In staffing for elementary education, right off the top of the list is world language. 2 teachers are being allocated. This is a program that is currently being developed, but there is a placeholder in the budget to introduce world language at the elementary level. General education, a net of 1 teacher. This has to do with class sizes across the grades at the elementary level. So we have calculated that there will be 1 additional section required. A resource room teacher at the elementary level, basic skills teacher, 1/2 of a position to supplement an existing position at one of the elementary schools. ESL teachers, 1 position net. There will be some movement across the schools, but there is a net of 1 position required. And instructional assistants, there are 2 half-time instructional assistants for the multiple disabilities program. That's footnoted as unbudgeted, but approved due to need in the current year, but it certainly affects the next year's budget, so that needs to be listed. At the middle school, language arts teacher, there will be a reduction of 1 position in the middle school. And then in the student services area, the budget reflects 1 guidance counselor at Churchill and 2 at East Brunswick High School. Again, these were positions that were added very recently, were not part of the current year budget, and certainly have an impact on next year's budget. In support operations, we are doing some reorganization, and as a result, we are eliminating one director position. And then under legal compliance, there is a trade-off between establishing a payroll coordinator and then a reduction in one of the bookkeeping positions. In summer programs, we have expanded services of the 3-week program for ESL. In the past, there have been selected students that have been invited in, and this year, all students qualifying for ESL will be invited into the program. And then for the extended school year program for special education, expanded services across the board for the 5-week program in each of the specified areas of special education. Moving on to non-staffing items in instruction, enhancements to the arts, as you can see listed, and in computer science. In the ILA area and mathematics. Science. And then on to athletics. Allow me to make a footnote on the athletics. This is one of those areas that the board has discussed for a number of years regarding having a plan in place so that we could rely on regular replacements. And so the budget does reflect that plan being implemented so that all athletic uniform replacements will be on a 4-year cycle. For curriculum, instructional, and student support, technology, infrastructure, and capital. We'll continue the technology investment as we have been through our lease purchase cycling program. There will be network improvements that are planned as a result of an outside report and some internal review that we have done. The long-awaited Novell to Microsoft migration, moving away from the current platform. We will be implementing a workforce management system which will allow for efficiency in monitoring time and attendance. And we are again providing for continued facility improvements. So there will be resources for a lease purchase and being able to do some significant work in the district. Budget information will be posted tomorrow on the district website. All of the materials that the board has will be available. Anyone that wishes to see paper copies, there will be a set of the materials available in the School Business Administrator's office. Upcoming dates, April 28th will be the public hearing on the budget that will be held here. And then the final budget adoption will be May 12th, and that meeting will be at Hammersholt Middle School.
Thank you. Any questions from Mr. Juliana? Mrs. Becker?
I was very glad to see that we have a phase-in plan for replacement of the athletic uniforms. Do we have a similar one in place for replacement of athletic equipment? Or can we?
Well, we could create a plan for anything. So,
Right, but-
what kind of athletic equipment would you be referring to?
The equipment that they would use, soccer
Nets?
balls, footballs, mats,
So,
the goals,
with regard to,
hockey sticks, whatever.
footballs, day-to-day kinds of items, they're considered supplies. Those items are included within the athletic budget for replacement. They're regularly replaced each year. There is a need to replace some nets
Yeah,
in, I believe, lacrosse and field hockey, if I'm not mistaken. And we are taking a look at that to see how we can mitigate those issues in the current year. But we do need to look at a better cycle of doing that rather than waiting until
yes.
it's absolutely necessary.
I'm sorry
So-
that I wasn't very articulate in listing the items under equipment, but
But I understand what you mean.
I think, they go through the same kind of wear and tear, obviously, that the uniforms do. And if we had some kind of a phase-in cycle in place, would give us an idea of how to plan in advance with future budgets.
Yes, that would help. Establishing a cycle so that we know exactly what to expect. And that's one of the things we've tried to do over a number of years, is establish fixed replacement periods so we know what to expect rather than have, peaks and valleys in terms of how it impacts the budget.
Well, hopefully
you
the
mentioned-
uniform replacement will give us some precedent on how that kind of a replacement system will work.
Yes, absolutely. And it is well-defined, something that we haven't really had in the past. And you have that in your budget books, and it is a 4-year cycle. So each year, there are specific sports, and we have the details of what those uniforms consist of, so we know what we'll be needing to replace each year.
And with the equipment, as you just alluded to, there are some items that are going to be big-ticket items.
Yes.
That need to actually not even go in that kind of a replacement cycle, need to be talked about more in maintenance and grounds and bigger picture.
The key is always the planning
Mhm.
and the anticipation rather than being reactive. Because if
Exactly.
we can plan and anticipate, we can better allow for the resources.
Exactly.
If I may, Ms. Becker, also, Mr. Unazzo, as he gets more and more involved and gets to understand the job better, he is actually looking at taking better stock of what we do have. and what
Great.
needs to be replaced. I know he's been sharing those
Terrific.
things with us.
Thank you.
And I don't want to belabor this, but we did spend a lot of time on creating this cycle for this uniform replacement. And I just wanted to state publicly that how much I appreciate the work that went into this by all parties, because it really represents, for the Board of Education and for all the administrators, the excellence that we portray in all of the elements of our education. And athletics is one of those pillars. And our athletes need to look good as well as play good. So I think that accomplishes that.
Mrs. Shaw?
You mentioned that our net increase is approximately 1.75, so that's actually under the 2% cap.
Yes, and and the reason for that is specifically the revenue offset, the reduction in taxes that will be required for the debt service. So when we look at the debt, the mortgage payment versus the operations budget, the combined result is a 1.75%. The general fund tax levy is 2%, but the combination is 1.75.
Okay. So last year, we had a situation where banked cap played a part in the tax levy. That is not the case this year?
No, we have not generated banked cap in the current year, and so it is not available.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Finance Chair, Mr. Filipczak?
Our allocation to the charter school was about 2.9 million, correct?
2.59, 2.6, yeah, 2.6.
2.5, 2.6.
There's no detail of, we're just laying out the money. We're not looking at anything they actually spend it on, do we?
No, it
You-
is an allocation that is paid based on a schedule the state provides to us.
Correct. But you gave us great information on detail on everywhere our budget goes to, correct?
Right. You're right.
Yes.
Right. But we don't know exactly where the 2.95
They're not
goes.
accountable to us.
Okay.
Dr. Ogden, we're right. I mean, historically, the charter school has no accountability to us. We just simply have to pay them. Is that the way this works?
Yes, they have accountability requirements for the state, and less than we have, but no, we have no authority or right or.
Do we know, do they publish similar kinds of information like Mr. Filipczak is suggesting?
I'm assuming it would be on their audit, but it wouldn't specify the amount that we give them, correct?
They have to have a budget.
They have a budget. They
we-
do have an audit. I honestly, I'm not sure the extent to which the resources section of their audit defines where the sources are, but their financial statements, I believe, are all available on the Department of Education website, as are ours in other school districts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? I am happy to see some investment in art. You had put up there a few things that we're doing in art. And Novell to Microsoft, huge thing. I know we've been looking at that for years. I think that will make a big difference in the lives of our staff, a very big
Agreed.
difference.
Yes.
So happy to see that. Thank you very much.